Hey everybody, Chris Agaseth here, Bird Dogs Forever podcast. Getting to be kind of a familiar routine. Kind of like it like this, you know. When I do these interviews, I actually am sitting in a sound booth. And I have my engineer, computer guru, director, editor, all rolled into one. His name is John Miller, Jon Miller. And John is quite a guy. John has got under his belt a movie that he shot on a Mount Everest expedition. And so his company's called Treeline Productions. And I just want to acknowledge, because John's sitting in the background all the time and you never hear him. It's kind of like the cameraman when you're out on a news broadcast. You never know the cameraman's there. But John's there making everything work for us. And his company's called Treeline Productions. And I'm going to make sure that you're reminded that we have a link on our website to there. Because if you need help with this kind of stuff, John is the man. Okay, well, our guest tonight is Rick Smith. This is a return engagement. Rick was very gracious with us a while back, and I got a very focused idea about our interview with Rick today. I think that one of the neat things that Rick does is I think that he addresses the human side of the hunting dog duo. I think an awful lot of people make the mistake of saying, well, let me bring my dog to a professional trainer, you train him, bring the dog back to me, and that's that. And don't work that way. So, Rick, how are you this evening?
I'm fine, Chris. It's good to be with you again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you back. I enjoyed talking with you last time, and we
was fun.
We got the idea that respect of a dog by a human of a dog is a real critical feature to making this thing work right. I'm interested in your thoughts about what humans do, both right and wrong, when they get together with dogs.
Well, what a good question. That's a great question. I hear all the time, you know, you got to get down to the level of the dog's thinking. I don't believe that. I think we got to get up to the level of the dog's thinking. The dogs are way smarter than what we give them credit for. If we approach them thinking they're just a dumb animal and we are so intelligent and stuff like that, you know, you're already behind the eight ball, because dogs are way capable of doing more than what we think they can. Now, if we go to thinking they can comprehend and understand better, we've got to start communicating with them, yes, at their level. Now, when we say our level or our way of communicating, we think it's with we say it's with our voice, okay? We go to saying here, whoa, ho, giving them sentences and stuff like that, and quite frankly, they read us by our body language. If you think, well, now why do I think that? My questions and my answers in my own mind, if I'm thinking about something, I'll put them back in a pack. If they're out in the wild looking for something to catch and eat and survive, one thing I notice real quick is they're not barking or yelling at each other all the time. Because if they were, they're going to scare the game off. But they read each other. Mm-hmm. Now, if we get quiet verbally, then they can concentrate better. Quite frankly, we can concentrate better. There's only three things we're really trying to accomplish with a dog. A hunting dog in the pack. Now, the pack may be just you and your dog, but that dog's got to know how to go with you, that dog's got to know how to come to you, and that dog's got to know how to be still. Now, a pointing dog is to stand still. The Flushing breeds is to sit still. If you conquer those three things, and you can do it without us having to name it verbally, we do it by our body language. Now, what I mean by that, if we're the pack leader, and we've got to be the pack leader for it to work, if we take off in one direction, that means one thing for that dog that's in your pack is to go with you. If we stop and maybe sit down or even lay down, that dog's supposed to do one thing, that's to come back to you. And when he gets around game, like we'll talk about the pointing breeds, they're supposed to stalk so they can get up close to them to catch him so that they can even have food. big mistake I think people make is we think we've got to tell them what to do.
Boy, listening to you is like taking a drink out of a fire hose. I'm so with you on this. I think it's dumbass luck that I have come by doing that with my dog. I'm different than maybe a lot of our listeners and certainly a lot of people you work with, and that is I've got a family pet hunting dog. And she sleeps in my bed, she lives in my house, and yet she's a superb hunting animal. She's a great athlete. And we early on, I brought her home. I got her home at 49 days of age, and the next morning we got up, and she's a little British lab, and I put the food in the dish, and of course she's just boom. And all I did is very gently take my right hand on her chest, my left hand on her rump, and moved her back and said, sit. And just held her like that. Then I let go, and she kind of moved forward, and I took very gently, came back and said, sit. Let my hand up, and she didn't move. And then she started to move, and I put my hand in front of her nose and said, wait. And she stopped. At 51 days of age, I could put food in her dish, and she would not take the food until released. And very few words ever passed between us.
You know what? You could have you named the conditioned response.
Okay.
And you got her to doing it first, but you were also naming it, but she understood what she was supposed to do.
Well, and I thought of that tonight because, again, you know, labs, they're going to eat everything they can all the time. They have no sense of when to stop. And before I came out to record the show this evening, I fed her, and now all I have to do is look at her, nod my head, and she sits. I put the 1 cup of food in her dish, and then I look at her, and she'll sit there and she'll drool like everything. And she will look at me with so much respect and so much love, and not until I give her a nod does she eat.
Right.
So
anytime you can do something like that with a dog, you're being the alpha, which is going to help you out in the field.
Yep.
And with what you were saying right then, you took advantage of the time you were spending with your dog, even though it was just around feeding time, to start getting some discipline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a dog that, I like the Christian thought around discipline is it's like discipleship. Discipline should never be confused with punishment.
Right.
Discipline is a clearly understood set of procedures, and that's what we're going to abide by and stick to. And that's what...
I talk about discipline all the time in my seminars, and what you said really rings true. A lot of people think when I talk about discipline is we're correcting or getting on to a dog, and that has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first time I ever learned to train a dog was back in the 60s. I was in flight training in Pensacola, and I went to that was a little bit rough. Choke collar, jerked the dog around and everything, and I can honestly say I never use a choke collar. I rarely raise my voice. As far as the electric collar goes, my dog is so gentle, I just put it on vibrate. It vibrates like a cell phone, and that's about all she needs. Well, go ahead.
With what they've got out nowadays with the real low-level stimulation, it is a great training tool. But again, a lot of people think with the electric collars we're shocking them.
Yeah.
And that's not it at all anymore.
Well, I had one in 1972, and my God, that thing was awful. And
they came out in '69, and they had one stimulation, and that was knock them to the ground. That was pretty tough.
And I was at the Marine Corps Air Station in Cherry Point, and the problem we had is some of the planes came over and they had electronic countermeasures on. It would trigger the collar on the dog. And, I saw a friend of mine had an Irish setter, which is a pretty soft dog to do that to. And that dog was squealing in pain, and it was the airplane triggering it. I'm glad the electronics are better. Well, let's go back.
Go ahead.
Let's go back to humans.
Okay.
Humans try to talk too much, don't they?
Well, the mouth is kind of a dangerous thing. It can get dogs and get us into trouble.
Amen.
One of the first things we do in our training is to get them is to get them quiet. And if you look at when you're training your dog, a lot of people want their dog excited. Well, we want enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have that prey drive.
Mm-hmm.
But to teach a dog anything, you've got to be able to get their attention.
Yep.
Well, if a dog's bouncing off the walls, you cannot get his attention. And a lot of people make a mistake thinking we're going to be able to train with our dog rearing and jumping and bucking. And first thing you got to do is get them calmed down just so you can get their attention so they can focus. How
do you do that?
Well, we start out by just putting them on a chain and allowing them. A lot of them want to yank and pull and dig and chew and bark because they're complaining because
mm-hmm.
they can't have their way.
Yeah.
The chain has no emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Our chain's only about 18 inches long. They'll lunge against it. Well, at 18 inches, that chain's going to give them a little jerk. The only thing is the dog's doing the jerking.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty quickly, the dog learns, well, I'm not defeating this chain. It's not going to rescue me. It's not going to console me. It's not. I can't put a guilt trip on it. So what they end up doing is settling down. What you see them first do on a chain is exactly what a dog will first do when you go to put a lead on them.
Mm-hmm.
If they're lunging on the chain, they're going to lunge on the lead.
Right.
If they'll settle down on the chain, they'll settle down on the lead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we started.
Okay. Yeah, you seem to emphasize that word quiet pretty much. And in fact, that's even one of the things describing your seminars, isn't it?
Right. Oh, yeah. We the whole seminar, we're not giving any commands. We're not naming anything. But we are getting our dogs to going with us, coming to us, and standing still or sitting still.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once we get that conditioned response, and they do it enough that it becomes a habit, then you can name it. And it's real easy to name. One of the easiest things you'll do is name the conditioned responses.
Sure. Now, what have you found in terms of humans? How hard are they to teach this stuff to?
If they're willing to just, first of all, themselves, just be quiet
mm-hmm.
and not be in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
When people go out to work their dog and they don't have a game plan, they go out confused, the dog's going to be confused.
Mm-hmm.
This is the hardest part right here. This is the hardest part. When they become the human being, when the human being becomes consistent, the animal becomes consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm saying or what I mean by that, let's say we go out and work our dogs in the field and the people want to be the alpha because they've got to be.
Yep.
Instead of chasing after the dog to hunt with and hunt for them, we want the dog to go with us and hunt for us, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They'll stand up and be the alpha, but then they'll jump in the car and go back to the house, and they'll allow the dog to be the alpha.
Uh-huh.
You cannot allow that. And what I'm saying is minor stuff, just like when you walk out, there's nothing wrong with having a dog in the house, a bird dog in the house. I've heard all the time how you can't make a good bird dog if you keep them in the house. Well, that's bogus thinking.
Yep.
But just like when you was working with your pup at feeding time, a dog in the pecking order is not supposed to eat until after we let them or after we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where that comes from, in the pack, your alpha in the pack out in the wild will eat until they're full. Everybody else stays back.
Yep.
Then the pecking order comes in.
Yep.
The bottom of the pecking order eats last.
Yep.
Now, walking out a door,
mm-hmm.
you go out that front door and you say, well, I want to be polite to my dog. I'm going to let him go first. Well, he'll gladly go first if you allow him, but the thing is you're giving him mixed messages. You're telling him he's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So the human is not consistent. Walking down the hall and the dog's laid out asleep and you walk around him. You told the dog he does not have to move because he's the alpha. You will go around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you have to go up there and kick them or anything,
mm-hmm.
but you can go up there and nudge them for them to get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is a classic example of love and respect, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
If you respect that dog, you will be consistent.
Yep. So have you had humans you've never been able to train?
I've talked That's a good question. I'm going to dance around this here real quick. When people talk to me about coming to seminar and they want this dog or that dog and will this dog do this, and I said, don't even worry about the dog. The dog is okay. The seminar is about the people.
Yep.
Getting them to become consistent, getting them to be able to be quiet, and understanding the system and staying focused on it. Because when you become focused on your training, the dog gets focused pretty quickly.
Do you have video?
Now back to your question.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Excuse me. Back to your question. Have I had some?
Yep.
I think everybody can train their dog if they have the discipline, if they are consistent. Now that's the hard part.
Yep.
If they.
I've noticed that a lot of human beings don't know their body posture. You know, I'm going to give you a confession here. I'm a medical doctor, and for many years I was a psychiatrist.
Right.
And we often, when people think we read their minds, what we really do is we read the choice of words they use, the postures, the tone of voice they use, and their facial expression. And gesture and posture actually frequently says more than words. And I find that a lot of human beings with their dog don't realize that maybe they're shrinking back or their gestures are not a dominant gesture. And it doesn't take much of a gesture to make a dog respect you. But I think a lot of humans don't even realize that.
You know, I really agree with that. Absolutely. If you go out there slinking around or acting, got your mind on something at work or at home or something like that, when you're not focused and maybe your shoulders are slumped or something like that, your dogs read that.
Yep.
You bet.
Yep. Yeah, my son has a pair of Australian Shepherds, and they're really good dogs. And he's got 3 little girls under the age of 3, so you know they're busy, and so they don't have all the time they can with those dogs. And we dog sat them for a week, and I just blew my son and his wife away when at the end of 1 week, I walk into their house and the dogs come running up to me, and I put my hand up like a stop signal, and they stop. I point at them, they sit. I move my one hand horizontally, they lay down. I give them another stop sign, and they lay there. They can't believe it.
Yeah.
But it's just that, again, it was that understanding of dogs realize, because when my son comes home, he's got 3 little girls he's going to run to. He's got his wife. He's got a 16, 18-hour-a-day working job. And so it isn't his priority to attend to his dogs and say, by the way, I'm alpha. Well, gosh, there's so much on this whole thing that we could keep talking about, but our time's running out. What I'd like to do is have you back a little later, because we kind of talked about people today. I want to talk about dogs next time. So if you're willing, I'd like to have you back.
Well, just give me a call anytime, Chris.
Good enough. Well, I appreciate that, Rick. And so, folks, there you're listening to, like I said, when you listen to him and you're taking a drink out of a fire hose. This is a guy that knows dogs. It's just a pleasure to have the opportunity for you to be able to hear from him. And then, you know, I'm unabashedly going to plug his seminars, and he's got training tapes, because if you just count on yourself to train your dog and you don't get an expert input, I think you're selling your dog short. Till we talk again, this is Chris Haggeseth saying thanks for your attention and your respect. Bye-bye.